Have you ever felt like you were lost in the dark, where fears and doubts dragged you deeper into the abyss? That was the feeling Lyra had carried in her heart for years, until a strange dream urged her to embark on a journey she could not have imagined. In that recurring dream, a distant voice whispered, leading her to an eastern forest, where light meets darkness and secrets are revealed. But this forest is unlike any other place she has ever seen. It is a place where reality merges with the deepest layers of the soul, a space that only those who dare to face themselves can enter. Lyra, with a heart filled with fear but also hope, begins her journey. Every step is full of challenges, from the foggy paths to the mysterious figures in the night. But in that cold and dark place, she found something she didn't expect. Not the light outside, but the light inside herself. Lyra's story is not only a journey through the darkness, but also a reminder that each of us has our light, just waiting to be awakened. But what did Lyra face in that forest? Did she find the light that her dream promised? And most importantly, what changed her life forever? Before we continue this story, tell us, where did you find this story? Was it by chance? Or perhaps it was your inner light that guided you? Leave your answer in the comments, hit subscribe, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell. Tomorrow, an even more special story awaits you. A story about how the light within you can change the world. In the heart of the ancient city shrouded in mist, where the sunlight barely flickers through the towering towers, lives a young girl named Lyra. Lyra is nothing more than a small candle, struggling to burn in the cold wind of her dark thoughts. Her mind is a maze of echoes, chaotic sounds from days gone by and fears of days yet to come. She flees both in her waking and dreaming, but all paths lead back to the same place, the impasse within herself. One night, when the mist is so thick that it is impossible to distinguish between sky and land, Lyra hears a voice in her head. Go to the eastern forest, where light begins and darkness ends. The whisper seems to come from somewhere deep, like an echo from her forgotten soul. At first, Lyra thought it was just a hallucination, but the dream kept repeating itself. It was so vivid that she could smell the damp earth, the rustling of leaves, and the golden glow in the darkness. Those rays of light touched her like gentle fingers, promising something: answers, relief, or perhaps a glimmer of hope. Finally, one morning when everything around her seemed to be falling apart, Lyra stood before the mirror and looked deep into her eyes. Eyes filled with questions, but no longer with faith. I will go, she told herself. Even if I have to step into the darkness, I will find that light. The eastern forest was a place no one dared to go. It was rumored that it was cursed, that those who strayed there would never return. But for Lyra, the risk was nothing compared to the despair that gnawed at her every day. A thin jacket, an old backpack, and a small lamp were all she had. She walked away, leaving the misty city behind, and headed east, where the forest awaited her. The journey was not simple. The path into the forest was rocky and full of thorns, as if it were trying to stop her. The wind howled in the night, bringing with it strange sounds that made her skin crawl. But every time she wanted to turn back, the dream appeared. That light was like a promise, a gentle embrace reserved for her. Just keep going, she told herself, her breath coming in short gasps in the cold air. When Lyra reached the forest's edge, it glowed like in her dream. But the light was not from the sun, but from the leaves themselves. Each leaf seemed to contain a piece of memory, a story. Standing before that scene, Lyra realized this was not just a forest. This was a place of testing, where her soul was stripped bare, where she would have to face herself. And Lyra stepped in, letting the light guide her, letting the darkness tell her the story she had long forgotten. The darkness in the forest was not completely dark. It was a mysterious blur, where the light from the leaves did not seem to illuminate the path, but penetrated straight into Lyra's heart. With each step she took, images appeared on the leaves. A long-lost smile, the crisp laughter of childhood, and even the tears she had hidden. She realized that this was not just a journey of searching, but a confrontation. Lyra walked among the strange sounds of the forest, the rustling of leaves like a whisper, the chirping of insects like her own heartbeat. Each step seemed to pull her deeper into her soul. However, the further she went, the more unpredictable the forest became. The path beneath her feet disappeared, replaced by old tree stumps twisting like imprisoning arms. Everything around her became strangely quiet, as if time had stopped. "Am I going in the right direction?" Lyra whispered, her hands trembling as she held the small lantern. There was no answer, only the light from a distant branch that seemed to be guiding her forward. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. "Keep going, Lyra. Just keep going." As Lyra moved forward, she saw a small stream blocking her path. The clear water reflected the light of the leaves, creating a shimmering dance on the water. She bent down to take a sip, but the stream suddenly stirred violently. From the middle of the water, a blurry figure emerged, not a person, but her image, with eyes filled with fear and helplessness. "Do you think you deserve to find the bright heart tree?" the figure said, her voice cold as a knife. "You have run away. You have doubted yourself. How can you find the light when your mind is a mess?" Lyra froze, feeling as if all her insecurities and failures were laid bare. But then, the light from the leaves above gently surrounded her. She remembered the dream, the voice that promised liberation. "I am not perfect," Lyra replied, her voice trembling but firm. "But I am trying. I did not seek the bright heart tree to become someone else, but to learn to accept myself." Those words seemed to break the darkness in the stream. The figure disappeared, the water calmed down, and on the surface, Lyra saw a ray of light leading straight into the depths of the forest. She followed the light, passing through thorn bushes, through seemingly endless turns. Finally, before her eyes appeared a clearing, as vast and peaceful as the sky at dawn. There, in the middle of the silence, was the Heart of Light tree. The tree was not tall or large. Its trunk was slender, and its leaves were as transparent as crystal. The light from the tree was not bright, but gentle and warm, like a gentle breath touching the depths of Lyra's heart. She stood there, feeling peace spread throughout her body, as if all her insecurities and darkness were soothed by this light. Lyra stepped forward, placed her hand on the tree's trunk, and felt its heartbeat match hers. And she knew the Heart of Light was not the answer, but the mirror reflecting her soul, pointing out that the light is always there, as long as she knows how to find it within herself. With that light in her heart, Lyra smiles, stepping into the next part of a journey that she knows will not only be for her, but also an inspiration to those who are lost like she was lost. Lyra stood before the Heart of Light, feeling as if time and space had dissolved. The gentle light from the leaves not only surrounded her body, but also penetrated her soul, stirring up memories that she thought had been buried. But before she could fully appreciate the peace, a voice rang out, deep and low, like an echo from the earth. "You have found me, but that is not enough. Only those who overcome the test can bring this light back to the world." Lyra looked up, confused. Before her, from the trunk of the Heart of Light, a figure emerged, a woman with eyes as bright as the sky after the rain. She had the air of wisdom, but also of dignity. "This test is not for you to prove your strength, but to face the very thing you have run away from." "I am ready," Lyra said, though her heart was filled with anxiety. The woman nodded. She handed Lyra a fragile crystal pitcher, as clear as tears. "Fill this pitcher with the water of the dark lake. But remember, only those whose minds are still can keep the water from spilling out or turning to mud." Lyra's heart sank at those words. She looked at the small pitcher in her hand. It looked so fragile that even a slight movement could shatter it. Then she pointed to the distance, where a path led to the dark lake, shrouded in a thick layer of mist. The dark lake appeared before Lyra, beautiful but threatening. The calm surface of the water was like a giant mirror, reflecting the darkness of the sky. Yet beneath its peaceful appearance, the water flowed swiftly, swirling like an endless stream of thoughts. She knelt at the edge of the pool, feeling her heart pounding in her chest. "Just be still," she told herself. But when she dipped the pitcher into the water, everything went haywire. The water overflowed the mouth of the jar, turning into dark, muddy streams. It was as if the lake did not accept the jar, or Lyra herself could not control herself. She tried again. A second time, a third time. Each time she failed, her heart felt heavier. Voices from deep within her mind began to echo. "You will fail, just like every other time. You are not good enough. You will never bring the light back." Lyra sat down, tears streaming down her face. Why did she feel so overwhelmed? The light from the bright heart tree was still there, but now it seemed so far away, so unreachable. Amidst her tears, a thought flashed. "Maybe it's not the water, it's me," she thought. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and focused on each breath. She no longer tried to control the jar or the water. Instead, she let herself flow with the natural rhythm of the lake. The sound of the wind, the rustle of leaves on the water, and the silence itself began to soothe her. This time, when she dipped the pot into the water, everything was different. The water flowed into the pot smoothly, clear as crystal. There were no more eddies, no more mud. Lyra opened her eyes, looking at the pot filled with sparkling water. She realized that it was only when she stopped fighting her fear and learned to accept that she could truly find peace. When Lyra returned to the bright heart tree, the woman was waiting for her with a gentle smile. "You understand, don't you?" Lyra nodded, her eyes sparkling. "You can't control everything around you, but you can control how you respond to it. This light doesn't come from the tree, it comes from within you." The woman smiled. "That's right. Now bring this light back into the world. But remember, whenever you find yourself lost, remember the lake and the peace you found there." Lyra bowed her head in gratitude. The crystal in her hand now held not only water, but the greatest lesson of her life. With that light, she stepped out of the forest, carrying with her the peace and faith to begin a new chapter, not only for herself, but for all who needed the light she could share. Lyra stepped out of the forest, clutching the crystal pitcher filled with water from the dark lake. The forest behind her was no longer dark or scary, but a part of her, as if it had engraved lessons into her soul. But as she looked ahead, where the ancient city was still shrouded in thick fog, she felt a warm glow spread within her. She was no longer afraid of the fog or the darkness, for she now carried within her the light of the bright heart tree, a light she had once thought only existed in a faraway place. The way back was not easy. The rough roads, the deep chasms she had crossed before now seemed lighter, not because they had changed, but because her mind had changed. Every time the pitcher in her hand swayed, Lyra did not try to hold on, but focused on her breathing and stillness. And the water in the pitcher still sparkled like little stars, reminding her that peace always begins with herself. When Lyra entered the city, everything seemed the same. The alleys were still dark, the lonely faces still passed each other like ghosts. But now, she realized that darkness was not the enemy. It was just a place where the light had not yet reached. And she knew that even a small ray of light could work miracles. Lyra walked to the central square where people usually gathered in silence, drowning in their despair. She stood there, holding the crystal vase high. A drop of water flowed out, falling to the ground. From where the drop touched, a light spread, gentle but powerful, dispelling the fog around the square. People stopped, looking at Lyra with amazement. "The light is not far away," she said, her voice a whisper but penetrating. "It lies within our hearts, waiting to be awakened. I used to be afraid of the dark, but it was the dark that taught me how to find the light." One by one, they approached her, without saying a word, but their eyes were no longer empty. One person reached out to touch the light, and a small ray of light flashed from within them. Then another. The light from Lyra spread, illuminating each heart. The dark city was now gradually brightening, not from the sun, but from the light that each person carried within them. Lyra smiled, her eyes filled with silence. She realized that her journey was not over. This light was not to be kept to herself, but to be shared, to spread, to help those who were still lost in their darkness. And as the bright heart tree had whispered to her, the true light is not somewhere far away, but within us, if we are brave enough to face it and accept it. With a soul as light as the wind, Lyra moves on, carrying the valuable lessons she has found, ready to light new paths, for herself and for those who need it. Lyra's story reminds us that light is not far away, but always exists within each person's soul. We often get caught up in the flow of anxiety and fear, but just stop, listen, and let go. You will realize that peace and strength are always inside you. Thank you for spending time with us on this emotional journey. It is your companionship that gives us the light to continue spreading stories of awakening and healing. If this story has touched your heart, please like to let us know you are here, share to spread this light further, and comment a sentence you would like to dedicate to yourself or those who are lost. Just one word, but it can be the first light to help someone find their way again.